All right. In this episode, I open up about my current struggles. I tell stories of my past when I faced obstacles. And most importantly, I tell you exactly what I did to get through difficult times in my life. So, complete transparency here. Half an hour ago, I had no idea what I'm going to talk about today. I literally told my fiance that I'm going to record a podcast and asked her to keep the noises down. At the same time, I knew I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I had no topic. And this would have stressed me out so much, let's say half a year ago when I just started out, when I just launched my podcast. Nowadays, I just feel fine. And you can argue it's the experience that I've done it many times already. But I think what makes the difference and why I'm showing up right now is simply I ask myself, what's the worst case that can happen when I record a podcast now? What's the worst case scenario? Maybe I mess this podcast up so much that I cannot upload it, meaning I would have to record it again. Well, that's not really my style because, in my opinion, a first version is better than no version, okay? And I would much rather publish 3 podcast episodes that are halfway okay instead of trying to record the perfect podcast episode. Okay, so no matter how this podcast is going to be, I'm going to upload it. Okay, now let's say I upload a podcast that is shitty, okay, that nobody likes. What's the worst possible scenario? Nobody tunes in, okay, nobody listens to the podcast, and maybe the ones that subscribe to my podcast, they unsubscribe. Okay, what would that do to me? How bad would it really affect my business? And honestly, it wouldn't be bad at all. I mean, I have like a lot of other streams where I can express myself, other social media platforms where I write posts, upload videos, and so on. And podcasting is obviously just another stream where I want to express myself better because it's this long time format where I can just express myself better because it gives me a lot of time. I don't need to write it all out in just 3 or 4 sentences, right? Because on social media, sometimes the text is limited. So long form content is actually the word I was looking for. Long form content. Anyway, it wouldn't be devastating at all, right? It wouldn't be devastating at all. And so here I am recording the podcast and I feel confident. Okay. Worst case, people will unsubscribe. Worst case, nobody likes this episode. Whatever. Wouldn't be as bad. My business would go on. My life would go on. Not all that bad, right? Now, you probably say podcasts, this situation is not really a difficult situation, right? And I completely agree. So let's take another example. The situation I'm in right now, I consider as a difficult situation because my daughter, Lara, she is ill. She has the stomach flu once again. It's like the second time in 3 weeks. Okay. She barely eats. She feels terrible. She's very, very demanding. Okay. She barely sleeps. So for us, the parents, it's very difficult at night because she wakes up all the time. Sometimes she wakes up and vomits, and yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. Kindergarten or what we call here Spielgruppe or daycare is not a possibility right now. You cannot bring a sick child to kindergarten. Actually, I called the kindergarten here and they said a lot of older children have it too. So I assume someone else already had it. Anyway, it's very difficult for us, okay? Because Laura is sick. As you can hear my voice, I'm also not 100%, okay? Then, because I'm not 100% and I need to take care of Lara, obviously, the time I can spend on my business is not as high as normal, right? I mean, I'm still doing what I can. I'm doing calls. I'm trying to reply to anyone. I'm doing my social media posts. I'm making sure that my clients get results. However, if you're sleep deprived and have the flu yourself, I mean, I had to take like a syrup before recording this, because usually I would just cough all the time and it's really freaking bad. I have like some drops for coughing right here in case I need it during the podcast. Okay, it's really bad actually. Now, with this circumstance, it's obviously very difficult, and doing calls or even replying to clients with low energy, it's difficult. Okay, it becomes very, very difficult. Just because my energy is much lower, and some things I do on a regular basis are just so demanding. Okay, even replying, because I feel so tired, I feel so weak, even replying to clients is just more demanding than usual. Then we have Gabriela, my fiance. Okay, she's supposed to work. Now, because Lara is so demanding, she asked her boss to stay home for a few days. Okay, and because it's already the second time, I'm afraid the boss didn't like this question very much, but he accepted. So Gabriela could stay at home, look after Lara, because Lara, asks for mommy all the time, and again, she's really, really demanding. Now, the situation sucks, completely sucks, okay? But also here, what I ask myself is, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, I mean, Lara is sick. I feel not 100%, but we will be fine. It takes a while, and somehow I think we're just not used yet to this cold here in Switzerland. We still need to get used to the temperature. Nothing compared to the winter in Brazil, okay, where you perhaps need to wear trousers, but jackets or so on, I haven't used in over 3 years, okay. Now, what I ask myself is, what is the worst case that can happen to my business, okay? Now, yes, my business suffers from it because my energy is low. And when my energy is low, I cannot show up the way I want on calls. Okay. Maybe I cannot even conduct the call because I'm coughing so much, or because I rather stay in bed. I should say I need to stay in bed. Like this morning, I just feel terrible. Now, if I cannot conduct calls, if I cannot show up for my clients, the worst case is I cannot get new clients. The worst case is that some clients would have to wait, let's say, an entire day to get my response. Now, what would that mean? If I don't get any new clients for, let's say, a week, if my clients would have to wait a bit longer than usual, would my business survive? It has to. Of course it will, right? A week without clients. I mean, if my business wouldn't survive this scenario, this difficult time right now, then I think I would have like a huge problem anyway, because problems, they happen. For some business, it's COVID. I wasn't really affected because I have been doing everything online. Okay. But for some business, it's COVID. For some business, it's like when people are sick, right? Whatever it is, obstacles are just part of it. And if you cannot survive a week or two or even a month without any new income, then there's something terribly wrong. Okay. So once again, what can happen to my business? Maybe I don't, my salary or my income will not be as good as normal, but other than that, I will be fine. Okay. Another example. When I moved to Brazil in 2018, okay. So I assume you know the story. In 2018, I left Switzerland, went to Brazil, left friends and family behind. I moved together with my fiancé, my girlfriend at the time, for the first time in my life. Okay. I didn't know how my future will look like from a career perspective. I still had my 9 to 5. However, I also knew that they could drop me at any time. I didn't know how to cope with the new culture, which is very, very difficult, by the way, Brazilian culture compared to the Swiss one. I didn't know anything about fatherhood, okay? And Laura's arrival was just like 3 weeks out, okay? I didn't know whether I can stay in Brazil in the first place. I mean, I hadn't had a visa yet, okay? I didn't know how my future is going to be. I was insecure and I was, I had anxiety. I was anxious. I just went there and said, Martin, you will figure it out, right? And it sounds so easy. If I said it now, you will figure it out. But again, what I ask myself, what is the worst possible scenario? I was so scared, right? I was so scared to take this move, to move abroad, to leave everything behind. But when I analyzed what actually the worst case is, it was not so bad anymore. Because the worst case would have been I would go to Brazil, would not feel comfortable there. I lost my job and I would have come back to Switzerland. Okay, that would be the worst case. Of course, there are some other questions, like what would happen to the relationship, what would happen with Lara. I mean, I could take them to Switzerland. I could have, I don't know, visit them, whatever it is. But worst case, really for me, I would come back to Switzerland and simply look for work here, live my life, whatever. Now, would that be all that bad? It's certainly not the thing I wanted, but again, it's worst case, right? And it wouldn't be all that bad, to be honest. I mean, I would not die. I would be all right. Okay. In all these scenarios that I just explained and told you, in all these scenarios, I ask myself this simple question. What is the worst case that can happen? I also ask, what would I do if that occurs? Okay. And don't get me wrong, this is not negative thinking. I don't want that you expect always the worst case. Not at all. Okay. But if you think about what can happen, you can accept that. You can look for solutions. You can already, figure out what you would do. And once you know that, you feel just much calmer because no matter what's going to happen, there will be a continuation. You will be fine. Okay. When my grandmother was ill, like 1.5, no, it was actually a year ago, about a year ago, my grandmother got ill. It was about Christmas of 2020. I mean, she had been struggling before already, but this is when it really got worse. I was in Brazil. My father informed me about the health condition of my grandmother, and he said something along the line that she probably won't make it until Christmas, or certainly not into the new year. And this hit me. This absolutely hit me. I was not in Switzerland. I couldn't be there. I couldn't. I mean, I could not have done anything anyway, even in Switzerland. But at least I could support my family. At least I could have been around them. But I was not, and I was sad. I was in Brazil, and I remember being there outside. I went for a walk, and I sat on a stone, and I just thought about it, like how sad it is that I can not see her. I had to see her in a while, obviously, because I was in Brazil. She's in Switzerland, and all the emotions came up. I almost felt a bit guilty, and since I know this part of life, basically, I expected her to go, and somehow I accepted that. I was okay with the worst case. I was prepared that, yeah, we're going to lose her, right? Now, she pushed through. And when we moved back from Brazil to Switzerland in February 2021, my daughter could see her again, my grandmother, so basically Lars' grandmother, and I could see her again. It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful, and I get all emotional here. Sorry for that. It was amazing, right? In the meantime, my grandmother, she passed away. Okay, like months later than actually expected, and obviously I was glad that I was here, that I could support my family, that I could see her again, that my daughter could see her also, and made me really happy. Okay, and also here, right? It's not negative thinking. It's not negative thinking, but I just went through this scenario. Okay, when she's gone, what's the worst case? And guys, this is really the key for overcoming any difficult situation. Okay, you need to ask yourself, what's the worst case that can happen, and how will you manage with it? Really just accept it and come up with a strategy how to cope with that, what you will do in this case. Okay, and what it does is actually every other scenario that occurs other than the worst case will be a surprise to you and will make you better. Like in this case, when I told you my grandmother, I honestly expected her to pass away earlier. Now she didn't, and I cannot express the happiness I had to see her again. On the other hand, if I expected her to live one more year and then she will pass away, I would have been extremely frustrated. So I think it's very important that we think of what's the worst possible scenario and then accept it, okay? Because everything outside or every other scenario will be a surprise and will be something positive and will make you feel better, will make you feel happy, okay? I think so often in life, it's the fear of failure, the fear of the unknown, the fear of rejection that is holding us back. And by asking this question, what's the worst possible outcome, you realize it's not all that bad, okay? I talked to a client of mine the other day, and he told me that he wants to start a podcast, and we briefly talked about it because my expertise is obviously fitness and health, and this was not really related to that, but he said he bought all the equipment and he's ready to record podcasts, but somehow he hasn't recorded a single one. And his equipment is like, it's fantastic. It's better than mine. He set it all up perfectly fine, looks very, very professional, but somehow he didn't record it, right? He didn't have the courage or the time or whatever. And I exactly took him through these steps, to this framework here. I asked him, okay, John, let's say it was John, let's say you record a podcast. What's the worst case that can happen? And it's like, okay, worst case is nobody tunes in, nobody subscribed. My follow-up question, okay, and what would that do to your life? And that, well, it would probably weaken my ego, but other than that, my life would go on. And I mean, I don't rely financially on a podcast. It would, it would be completely fine. Okay. And this was quite a realization. And I said, dude, yeah, you're right. I think I just need to do it because I really cannot lose anything, right? You cannot lose anything. And I hope it's going to record a podcast soon. I would be proud. If you listen to this, I would be very proud if you had your first podcast episode out soon. Okay. It was really just the fear of rejection, fear of, rejection, probably uncertainty that held him back. And if you're in a similar position, if we're in a similar situation and, maybe you want to be self-employed, start your own business, start a project, start a family, maybe get in shape, whatever it is, chances are that you will be afraid, that you will be scared, that you will be uncertain. And what I want you to do is simply ask this question. What's the worst case scenario? Okay, and would it really be that bad? Accept the worst case scenario. And once you do, you'll realize it's not all that bad. And you're ready to take the risks, 100%. I want that you use this framework to reach your goals, to overcome obstacles, and to become a better and strong human being.